Hey guys, it's Michael Kummer here. In today's video I want to talk about the benefits of combining cold plunging with sauna bathing, or more generally speaking, combining intentional heat with intentional cold exposure. Now I should mention that I have a lot of resources on my blog that go into the details of the benefits of infrared saunas, the benefits of ice baths or cold plunges, the benefits of combining both with all the scientific research behind them. So check that out. I also have a couple of reviews on my blog that discuss the cold plunges that I use, the saunas that I use, so check all of that out. I'm going to link it down below in the description. Now before we get started, make sure you subscribe to this channel and you click on the little alert button so you get notified when I publish more videos like this. Now besides talking about the benefits of combining cold plunging or ice bathing with sauna bathing or heat exposure, I'm also going to cover how long you should do both of those things to get the most benefits, and also in what order, because the traditional approach obviously is to go from hot to cold, but there are different ways of doing it. I'm going to discuss a little bit more the details of why certain orders make more sense depending on what goals you have. So let's talk about the combined benefits. Both cold exposure and heat exposure are hormetic stressors, meaning they trigger hormesis, and that's in a nutshell what that means is that what doesn't kill you make you stronger. So the body gets exposed to a stress, to a certain stressor, adapts to that stressor and comes out more resilient and better adapted on the other end. And that applies to both cold as well as heat exposure. I've noticed that since starting cold plunging over a year ago, I'm more resilient in the sense of that I don't get cold as often. I can tolerate the cold much better than before. I'm less sick. I'm just more robust and resilient overall. And sauna bathing or heat exposure does the same thing basically, just from a different angle. I'm now more less heat sensitive. So we live in Georgia, it gets hot and humid in summer, and I just feel more comfortable outside than I was before. Before I was already, I want to be in my AC controlled home, and I don't want to be too cold or too hot. Now I'm significantly more resilient, I feel like, and I feel better in either of those extremes. Number two benefit, both of them increase blood flow and lower inflammation, but in a different way. Sauna bathing is a vasodilator, meaning that your blood vessels dilate and it immediately increases blood flow. If you have an acute inflammation, maybe you got injured or something, that might sound counterproductive, because many people think that, well, if they have a sprained ankle or inflamed somewhere, put on ice to reduce the inflammation. But very often that's actually counterproductive. And sauna bathing increases blood flow, and with increased blood flow means you get more nutrients, more oxygen to the affected tissue, so it can heal quicker, and so your inflammation goes away quicker. It doesn't reduce inflammation immediately because it increases blood flow instead of decreasing it, but it promotes healing and recovery, and so your inflammation goes away quicker over time. Cold plunging, on the other hand, restricts blood flow. And so if you have increased blood flow due to inflammation, you go into the cold plunge, it reduces blood flow, and so your inflammation goes down. That might be good in some cases, like if you're actively bleeding somewhere, if you've torn a muscle and you want to reduce the bleeding, then cold exposure is actually a good thing, because it reduces the amount of blood that leaches into your tissue and then clogs everything up. So both ways can reduce inflammation. One is more a delayed response in terms of heat exposure. Cold exposure has an immediate effect by reducing blood flow. And so if you think now, well, so how can I use this? In terms of exercise, a good example is if you're a CrossFit athlete and you have 3 workouts a day. In between those workouts, I would probably jump into the cold plunge, to reduce the pump, to reduce the blood flow, and to reduce some of the inflammation incurred by the previous workout, so I'm ready for the next one. But if you're done with the workout for the day, I would probably jump into the sauna to relax and recover and increase blood flow, to get nutrients into all the affected tissue, and so you can combine both strategically depending on what your goals are. Number 3, both cold plunging and sauna bathing improve or boost your immune system temporarily. The way they do it is cold plunging causes the release of so-called cold shock proteins. And so those proteins get released in response to the cold shock, and they support your immune system to fight off pathogens, infections, remove damaged cells and proteins, etc. And sauna bathing has a similar effect, but via the release of heat shock proteins. So both of those extreme stressors boost your immune system temporarily, but from a different angle. Whenever I feel like my body is fighting something, I haven't really gotten sick in a long time, but sometimes I feel that there is something inside of me that my body is currently fighting against without me really being sick. And I typically notice that when I work out. So when I push towards my red line, I can tell that if my red line is significantly lower than usual, that's an indication that my body is dealing with something. And whenever that happens, I go into the sauna and then into the cold plunge, and I do that for maybe 2 or 3 days, and usually by then I'm perfectly fine, back to baseline. And by having my body supported, by having boosted my immune system temporarily to fight off whatever my body needed to fight off. So cold shock proteins, heat shock proteins, they modulate other immune factors, killer cells, etc. And I'm going to go more into detail on my blog post, so check that out. But the bottom line is both can boost your immune system from a different perspective, or from a different angle, I should say. Number 4, both heat exposure, sauna bathing, and cold plunging promote fat loss. But again, using a different mechanism. For example, when you're in the sauna, your heart rate is likely gonna go up. You're warming up, your heart rate increases, and it's like doing a mild cardio workout. When I'm in the sauna and I look at my heart rate monitor, my heart rate is like at a pace of maybe, up to 130 I've seen. So that's like if I, during a brisk walk or a light jog or something. So I'm actually doing a cardio workout while sitting in the sauna without actually moving. And by getting your heart rate up, it stimulates fat burn, especially if you do it in a fasted state. If there is no fuel that your body has available to burn, your body is likely going to tap into fat as a source of energy, and that increases your fat loss and your weight loss after all. Now, cold exposure on the other end promotes fat loss via 2 mechanisms. One is you start shivering. If you get really cold, you start shivering, and that shivering response means your body is actively burning fuel to keep you warm. And that's one of the reasons why when you get out of the cold plunge, don't try to warm up immediately. Don't take a hot shower. Don't, don't dry off. Let you air dry. Just do whatever it takes to continue shivering, because that burns fat. The second aspect of cold exposure is that it activates brown adipose tissue, and that burns fat without a shivering response. So those 2 things together mean that exposing yourself to uncomfortable temperatures while you're in the cold plunge actually burn fat without you having to go for a workout. And if you combine both, obviously, if you go from hot to cold and then just, shake it off literally, just let it shiver after you've gotten out of the cold plunge, you can leverage both the cardiovascular workout in the sauna, as well as the shivering and the activation of your brown adipose tissue as part of your cold plunge experience. Number 5, both sauna bathing and cold plunging reduce stress. Now, with sauna bathing, it's somewhat obvious. Most people feel relaxed when they're in the sauna. It causes a release of endorphins, etc. So it's very much a relaxing experience for the most part, unless you stay in way too long and it's too hot. Then you might actually, your body might respond with stress. But overall, sauna bathing, very relaxing experience, very good to reduce stress and just to relax. Cold plunging, on the other hand, is an active stressor. When you get into a cold plunge, especially during the first few times, you might get into full-on fight or flight response. So that's obviously the opposite of relaxation. But the thing is, as you learn how to deal with your sympathetic response, as you learn how to leverage breathing, for example, to down-regulate your sympathetic response and to get back into a parasympathetic response, as you learn how to be okay and calm in the cold plunge, that's a very powerful tool to help you reduce stress and better deal with stress overall. I have noticed that as part of my cold plunge experiences, as I have learned to deal with the stressor of being in a situation where I absolutely did not want to be, where my brain was like, get out, you're gonna die if you stay here. As I've learned to deal with that, I also learned to apply the same technique, be it breathing and just down regulating my sympathetic response in other areas of my life. So cold plunging has actually helped me reduce my stress overall, even though in the moment it was very much a stressful situation. But again, if you then combine the relaxing effects of sauna bathing with the skill to manage your stress in a very cold environment, you can overall significantly reduce your stress and learn how to better manage stress. Number 6, both hot and cold exposure help you boost your mood by releasing endorphins, norepinephrine, dopamine, and some of the other hormones that make you feel good and that boost your mood. I can tell that anytime I get out of the sauna or the cold plunge, I feel better. I feel at peace. I just feel good. And in particular, when I combine both sauna bathing with cold plunging, it like gives me the double dopamine effect, and I just feel good about it. Number 7, both of these tools can improve your sleep. Now, there are some caveats to that, because sauna bathing or heat exposure increases your core temperature, at least temporarily. But once you've gotten out of the sauna, there is a cooling off effect where your core temperature actually drops below baseline. And that's important because a drop in core temperature is required before you can fall asleep and to get into deep sleep. So that's why a hot shower or a sauna before bedtime is a great idea to fall asleep quicker and to sleep better, at least during the second half of the night. Cold plunging, on the other hand, is more associated with giving you a boost in energy. So if you cold plunge right before bedtime, your core temperature might drop while you're in the plunge, but then there is a heating up period that might actually negatively impact your sleep. And so it depends a little bit on timing. I've noticed that if I cold plunge in the early afternoon or in the morning, I still sleep better at night, and I think that's closely related to my ability to calm down, to settle down, to calm my mind, and to better manage stress. And so it might not be the cold per se, but the skills that the cold plunge has taught me that helps me then to sleep better. So what I would recommend is, if improving sleep is your priority, maybe cold plunge in the morning, learn how to manage stress, learn how to be okay in a very stressful environment and to calm your mind, and then do the sauna in the late afternoon or evening before bedtime to drop your core temperature and fall asleep quicker. Now the question that many people ask is, so how long do I have to stay in the cold plunge and or in the sauna to get the maximum benefit, especially if we want to combine both of those things? There was a very good study from a Scandinavian metabolic scientist called Susanna Soberg, and she discovered that if you stay in the cold plunge for 11 minutes per week, and you can do, split it up in segments of 2 minutes maybe, or you can do 6 and 5 minutes. Like this week, I did a 6-minute cold plunge and a 5-minute cold plunge a few days later. So I had my 11 minutes. And as far as sauna bathing is concerned, 57 minutes appears to be the sweet spot to get the most benefits. You can obviously do more, but you might see diminishing benefits if you do more. And so 11 minutes and 57 minutes per week appears to be the sweet spot. And you can break that up into segments. You don't have to stay 57 minutes in the sauna in one shot. I usually do 30 minutes and then another 30 minutes. So I usually accumulate 60 minutes. Sometimes I do a third session for 90 minutes, and the same with cold plunging. Just, split it up across the week. Now, one thing that's important though is that with some of those stressors, depending on what the benefits are that you're trying to achieve, more is not always better. For example, I've seen a study that discovered that following a certain sauna protocol only once a week causes a 16-fold release in growth hormone. But if you do that protocol more often, or if you stay longer in the sauna, you don't get the same effect anymore. So there are diminishing returns. And for this particular example, the protocol suggested to do 4 sauna sessions per day. 2 30-minute sessions in the morning. So you would do 30 minutes, then take a 5 to 10 minute break, cool off a little bit, another 30 minutes. And then in the afternoon, you repeat 30 minutes, quick break, 30 minutes. So 2 hours in total in the sauna with a few breaks in between session 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, causing a 16-fold release in growth hormone. If you do that more often, you don't see the same effects anymore. And that's because your body gets used to it. Your body adapts. That's part of becoming more resilient. So it depends on a little bit what your goals are. If you want to get the most increase in or releasing growth hormones, do it once a week very intensively. And it doesn't have to be sauna. This is very likely just a general response to stress. You could do the same with cold plunging, even though I haven't seen any study that figured out exactly how long and how often you need to do this. You could do the same with exercise and with other types of hormetic stressors that cause your body to respond with a release of growth hormone to that stressor. And now let's talk a little bit about the order in which you should cold plunge and sauna bathe. Now the traditional approach, also known as the Nordic cycle, means you go from hot to cold. So you stay in the sauna, you go to the cold plunge, and then you can, go back and forth several times, but you end in cold. And the reason why you end in cold is that it gives you a boost in energy. If you've done this Nordic cycle for a couple of times and you end in heat, you're likely gonna come out and you need a nap because you're done. You're so relaxed, you probably, might wanna eat and then take a nap. If you end in cold, you're invigorated, you're energetic, and you can continue doing whatever you wanted to do during that day. Unless it's, before bedtime, then I might argue maybe do the end in warm. What I usually do hot to cold as well, but sometimes I do cold to hot. And the reason why I do this is because I don't want to fall into any routine. I want to always keep my body guessing of what's next. And sometimes, especially if I do that regimen, if I didn't have time in the morning and I still want to get my cold plunge in, and it's already late and I don't want to negatively impact my sleep, I go to the cold plunge and then I jump into the hot shower, so I end in hot. Or I go to the sauna, or so my point is, it depends on what goals you're trying to accomplish. If you want to be energetic after your session, end in cold. If you want to be sleepy and relaxed, end in hot. If you want to keep your body guessing, do both, change it up a little bit. That's what I do. I never want to fall into a routine. I never want my body to get used to anything. I want my body to be stressed every single time because I use those stressors intentionally. And the same goes with how often I do it. In the beginning, I cold plunge every single day. So to get into a routine, to get used to it. But then I figured, well, I actually don't want to get used to it. And also sometimes I don't do it for a couple of days and then I go in again and I'm like, whoa, this is so cold. And I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what I want. I don't want to get used to anything. I don't want to feel comfortable in a cold plunge. I want to be stressed, at least to a degree. And I want to feel, that hormetic stressor so my body can adapt and become more resilient. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, let me know what I could have done better. Until next time.